This is Unpivot, the show for Excel and Power BI fans and anyone who likes chatting about data. I'm Mark Proctor.
I'm Giles Male.
I'm Sue Bays.
And I'm Diarmuid Early.
Hooray! See, we can get through the first few seconds without win. We don't need him, do we?
It took you 5 minutes to start the recording.
I was going to say, it's taken us 6 minutes.
That's not the point.
It was very strange for me hearing that little, start music at normal speed, because Giles and I have talked about it. I'm like a 2x speed listener for everything, so I've never heard that at regular speed before.
That's interesting you say that, because at what speed does everyone watch your YouTube videos, Dim? 0.5. Oh, he did something. What did he do? What did he do?
Yeah, pause, rewind, pause, rewind.
I remember the first live session Dim did for Full Stack to the community. I remember within 2 minutes, I'd written down 4 or 5 things. I was like, I've never seen that before. I've never seen that before. Dim's just going like, we'll just set this up. And I was like, oh my God, like there's an hour of this genius stuff popping out. It's hilarious.
I did, we went on this Power BI cruise a couple of years ago, and there's a chap called Greg Baldini, who is just, his knowledge is just phenomenal. And he was presenting live, and I went, can you stop? Just go back so I can catch up and repeat. I said, I need this on YouTube. So he was very kind and did the same for me.
YouTube is great that way.
Oh, yeah. Especially when it's sort of such knowledge, being transferred.
Yes. Right. Well, let's make a proper start with the show. We've got a guest with us. A guest, we have Dim Early. Now, because I think you hail from Ireland originally, so therefore the spelling of your actual name is one of those names that it's like Siobhan or all those other names where it doesn't seem to appear that any of the letters are in the right order. Now, I apologise if that is, xenophobic or anything. It's not meant to be.
I mean, it's not an un-British take on my name.
Is it Diarmuid? Is that how you would say it?
It's not how I would say it, no.
That sounded wrong. That definitely sounded wrong.
Okay.
So, it's an interesting one. Like, in normal day-to-day life, I kind of naturally tone it down a little bit. Like, I would say Diarmuid. But if I was speaking to an Irish person, I would probably be a little like the Irish pronunciation. The D has a bit more of like a J sound, so it's like Diarmuid. But that seems like I've lived in the UK and the US for too long that seems almost affected if I'm speaking to someone who's not Irish now. So it's interesting. How do I say it? Well, it depends on who I'm talking to.
Well, given my inability to say it, you will be called Dim for the rest of today.
And that's A-OK.
Good, because that's the best way to keep it. So, Dim, do you want to just tell us a few things about yourself, a few things about your background, and then we will go from there?
Sure. So I'm a mathematician and physicist by background originally. Studied maths and physics in university, and then did a PhD in computer science. I spent a couple of years working at the Boston Consulting Group in London, and then I spent about 10 years working at Deutsche Bank between London and mostly New York. And then I started my own business, Early Days Consulting, about 5 years back, and that's what I've been doing since. I do like financial modeling, data analysis, basically all kinds of Excel stuff.
You didn't mention esports at all then. I'm really impressed. You didn't mention that you're the LeBron James. You didn't mention you're like a multiple world champion. That was very humble. And don't you dare take my humble crown, Dim. I'm not having this.
Yeah. This is what it means, Giles.
Second humblest MVP.
Yeah.
You can have that.
Since Giles has picked up on that, do you want to give us a background to your competing in events and other things? You're a world champion. I don't know what. There was a video you did the other day where you completed round 8 of something. I don't really know how these things are structured or how somebody wins. All I know is that somebody gets some money at the end in Las Vegas. So just tell us, how does that all fit together? How does that work?
All right. So, I mean, the kind of long history of this is, the original competition was Model Off back in, I think it started in 2012. I first entered it in 2013.
Wow.
Like entered it as long as it ran, which was up until 2019. And that was like mostly financial modeling, but like the people setting the questions liked to kind of play games in Excel. So there was a certain amount of like, I don't know, modeling a board game and, modeling gambling odds and card games and all sorts of, non-traditional financial modeling stuff, solving mazes and that kind of thing. And then that competition kind of faded away, but around the same time, a new one started called the Financial Modeling World Cup. And that was originally more kind of exclusively traditional financial modeling. And then they kind of set up a separate parallel stream to that, which was only the kind of non-financial modeling stuff, like the games, the sort of problem solving in Excel, and did like a really nice job of turning that into what they call an esport, meaning it's kind of designed to be spectator friendly. Like they broadcast the rounds on YouTube. They have commentators to explain what's going on and all this stuff. So now they run kind of two parallel competitions. There's the one which is just, financial modeling. You spend 2 hours, you build models of 3 different companies, you answer a bunch of questions, and you do that like 8 times over the year. And then just, league style, whoever has the most points over the year wins. And then there's the esports competition, which has a very complicated set of qualifiers, but basically ends up being a kind of knockout. And the last, group of people come to Vegas for a live final in an esports arena. Last year was the first time they did that. It was very cool. And yeah, they eliminate until the last person standing and they win. So that's coming up in just under 2 weeks.
So I heard that for the Olympics, that in 2025, there's going to be an esports Olympics in Saudi Arabia.
I did see something about that. I don't think we're part of that.
You don't think it sells in there? Wow. So you're not going to get a gold medal as part of this?
I have been an Olympian in a narrow sense. I did the maths Olympiad in high school.
You did what?
I did the maths Olympiad for
the
Ireland.
The maths Olympiad. My God, you are multi-talented.
All this stuff is coming together now about why you are the LeBron James of Excel.
It's because of my unusual height. I assume that's where the nickname came from.
Debating champion, that came out because there's the big Paul Barnhurst debate stuff going on. Debating team at university.
I was a debating champion. Yeah, that's how I met my wife. We both debated for our universities.
Nice.
Right. Well, before we get onto the news, because of the way this show has kind of unfolded over recent weeks, it appears that everyone gets a jingle now, right? So originally, my plan was to play this in my own natural way, which is to kind of downplay it as much as possible, to have 0 jingles. But then, because everyone gets a jingle, there's like a constructive obligation. There's like an accounting joke in there somewhere. A constructive obligation that everyone gets a jingle. So therefore, even though I didn't want to have any jingles, I had to do one just to make you feel welcome. I will add on to this that I thought that I wanted to help make you feel at home amongst us and settled. So in terms of the software, I asked for Irish folk as a style that you feel comfortable and at home, as if you're just like, when you're a kid relaxing with your mum and dad in your pajamas, and then some music comes on the radio. So
that's quite an intro.
Oh no, I'm all ears.
He's never going to come back.
I apologize for this in advance. It's meant to make you feel happy and settled. It's not nothing else. Okay, here we go. In the corner of spreadsheets where legends arise, there's a man with a vision and Excel in his eyes. Diarmuid Early's the name, and he's late in the game, breaking down formulas, igniting the flame. He's the LeBron James of Excel
down to the master, the LeBron of Excel. Slam dunking the problems, one array at a time. The formula so flawless, it should be a crime. Advanced custom functions, his skills are renowned. Here comes Dim Early, he's about to be crowned. He's the Lum James of Excel, can't you see? With every cell and formula he makes history. From functions to models, his skills always sell. Bow down to the master, the LeBron of Excel.
There you go.
Beautiful.
It's like I never left Ireland.
Sue looked absolutely bemused throughout that.
I had to look up
Do you now feel more at home?
No, it was.
I don't think that was like Irish folk music. I think that was like I
Not
don't
what
know,
I've heard in the pub.
American folk music style or something. I don't know.
Hey, that's what AI believes is Irish folk music. So
Doesn't have
that's
you reached
collective
into your
knowledge of
Guinness
the
World
entire
Records?
world.
There you go, Jim. You
I
put that
I
on.
feel very at home now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tick.
Wow.
Job achieved. Right, should we head on to news? News. Has anyone got any news to share? So I noticed yesterday, and I didn't see it. There was the financial modelling great debate, which Dim, you were on. I haven't watched it yet. Was it a good session? Was it worth watching?
It was good. It was good fun. I mean, it was, as with many of these things, most of the time it was like, oh, well, of course we agree on most things. And it was all, very, very friendly and collegial, except for the bit about circular references where, we just went at each other.
It was good fun to watch. I was going to go to bed. I completely forgot it was on. And then I just scanned LinkedIn and I saw it was live just as Dim was doing one of the debates. But I did feel sorry for the guy trying to justify we should all be using circular references. That felt like a little bit of a push.
How did he get that? Did he have to answer that way, or did he?
No, Paul sent us all a survey in advance to be like, here are all the hot button issues. What side are you on? And then paired us up accordingly. He knew that I'm particularly steamed about circular references, so he assigned me that one.
Oh, so did the person you were debating I assume that was just a forced debating position.
There were a couple where it was just like, surprise, here you are, because I don't know, I think some people didn't turn up or something, had last minute issues. So I was not expecting to be debating against Craig on dynamic arrays, which is a dicey position to try to get into on the fly, but I was definitely ready to fight the fight for circular references or against circular references.
Good. So that's worth watching. Any other news from anyone? Giles, Sue, Dim, any other news?
My dog got injured a week ago, so I spent the week in and out of the vets with a very sick dog. Almost $2,000 of vet bills. Thank God for insurance. So all my plans, Dim, this is my excuse, just bear with me. I was going to have a collection of 100 lambdas by now, and I was going to have mastered OA Robot to not embarrass myself in Vegas. And it's all gone. It's all gone to the wayside. I was going to say a rude word then. It's all gone to the wayside. So dog took priority, unfortunately.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, that's too. But she's getting better now, isn't she?
Yeah, she's a lot better. The wound got infected. So for anyone with dogs or cats, maybe not so much, but maybe a little bit. You know what it's like when your little pup gets injured. It takes over everything. So that was my news. And I'm causing a right storm at the moment about circular references and dynamic arrays on LinkedIn, but that's another topic.
And my news, no significant runs, only a half. Lots of work, lots and lots of work, but a little bit of partying as well. So building up to the Christmas festivities early.
What parties have you been going to? Where was our invite, by the way?
You weren't here. You're up there. You're all away.
I mean,
I've been told off by someone for inviting them. So it's just my party. Okay.
It was your party. Now I'm
Well, no, it wasn't my
really
part.
insulted.
It was my group that went out, but yeah, just hanging. And do you know they do cider testing? So I live down in the West Country, Dim. So we're quite heavy into cider, as is Ireland, as I found out. But I went to Spain and they do little floats of wine tasting as well. So we were able to taste the wine before we then decided what we were going to drink. And then I went to this lovely little gin cocktail place, and the upstairs was made the sort of hallway that you go up. It was a mast of a really old ship, so it was lots of fun.
Mixing your drinks a bit there. So cider, wine, and then gin.
Oh yes, that's why it was only a half.
Well, I know that this is, you know, a long distance athletics podcast with a side in data. So you'll like this one. I've just signed up for an Ironman for next year.
No way! Well done, you.
Yep.
Good effort.
Brilliant.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I have to do it first.
When is it? When is it, Tim?
It is pretty much a year from now, 1st of November next year.
Oh, fabulous.
Fair
And
play.
whereabouts?
How many
In
miles?
Florida. It is 140 miles. So it's like 4 kilometer swim, and then a 180-kilometer bike, and then a
Marathon.
42-kilometer
Yeah.
run, or plod, more likely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You're gonna get the tattoo afterwards. Somewhere.
Probably not. No. No,
You're going to get the
just
tiniest medal possible, and then continue to wear it, just like Giles.
A tattoo bigger than the medal.
so
Tattoo is bigger than medal.
I don't know if this is like standard, but I did one once before, and the medal was like gigantic.
Yeah.
Now it's like my son's toy.
Yeah,
Good luck. That's
some of
cool.
them are wooden now, which is very good for the planet. But I'm just looking. I got my Budapest was huge. I did a Cornish one. That was nice of a mine. Yeah.
Ironman's a serious endeavor, though. But you did one before, just a few years back, right?
Well, it'll be 10 years, just over 10 years from the first one to the next one.
Nice.
Which is your favourite part of the Ironman? Are you sort of the cyclist and not enjoy the running? Or?
I mean, I feel like you kind of have to be mostly a biker, because that's what most of it is, whether you
Definitely
like it or not.
Yeah.
I will see how it shapes up this time. But like last time around, because I can go the distance, but I'm very slow. I think it took me almost 16 hours last time, which is definitely not an impressive time. But yeah, I was quite worried. Like, would I make the bike cutoff? Because there's like, whatever, you start at 7 a.m. and you have to finish by midnight, but you have to finish the bike by whatever, something like 5:30. And in my mind, it's like, if you finish that and you have 6.5 hours to do a marathon, you can pretty much walk around it and still make it there. So that, the running never seemed like the major risk factor, but the bike did. So yeah, I suspect most of my training will be biking.
Yeah.
Good effort.
I reckon if I did an Ironman, it would take me 10 years to recover as well. So, so I think it's probably best to avoid them entirely. That's my approach. I've got one piece of news to share. So last time I may have goaded Win slightly. So Win had a video on the easiest dependent drop-down list, which I then released a video of the easiest dependent drop-down list that I said was easier than his. So he then came back and came up with the even easier dependent drop-down list, which swings and roundabouts. His probably is slightly easier. But today I recorded a video which I'm calling the even easier, easiest dependent drop-down list, easiest method in the world ever.
That sounds catchy.
But, so having Win kind of beaten me, I then came up with this new method that I then sent to Win, and I was like, I've got a better method than you now. To which he then responded with, but if you tweak this bit, and I was like, that's a good idea, I'll do that. And then I go, oh, if I tweak that bit. So in the end, we've been backwards and forwards. So this is now a combined effort.
Collaborative. I love that.
I hate
so
that.
great.
I
That
wanted
is
to
very
fight.
wholesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was so funny when you said about it last week. Wynne just sat there and went, didn't say very much and smiled, kept his card close to his chest, and then in a couple of days, out it came.
So yeah, so next Thursday, watch out for the even easier, easiest dependent drop-down list, easiest method in the world ever video.
That's lovely, isn't it? Collaborative working together.
No, it's not. I
Exactly.
want to fight. I want to fight it out. I want everybody to get on.
You and Lawrence can do some videos together.
Yeah, no. No comment.
Lawrence is the previous winner of the Financial Modeling World Cup last couple of years, and a combative individual.
Oh. Highly competitive.
He and Giles have butted heads a number of times.
Never met the guy, but Dim invited me into the pro WhatsApp group, and even though I am not a regular competitor, so I went in with the view of like, keep quiet, just be glad to be here. But Lawrence kept saying things. I was like, oh, I can't not say it, and then I had to text him and go, I'm really sorry, Dim. I know you invited me in, but I can't. Like, the average finance salary is not £200,000, for God's sake. Like, open up your bubble. Anyway, don't get me started. I'm sure he's lovely. Oh, that felt good.
Therapeutic.
Things that make it interesting. You like to know the background.
See,
He's also, by the way,
you say you want to fight, but here you are complaining about the fight. I don't know what to tell you.
he's also, but to give him kudos, he's a brilliant modeler.
Yep.
World-class, brilliant modeler. We'd probably meet and get on like a house on fire.
You could have done.
Till he listens to that rant.
I mean, if he didn't get on with people who had occasionally said that he was, frustrating or crazy or, arrogant, he wouldn't get on with anyone. So
I might have to edit all this out.
No, leave it in. It'll be fine. Well, it's good. It's therapeutic. Honestly, might as well let it out. We'll have a beer one time and it'll be great. You'll show me up for his superior modelling skills, and I'll doff my cap to him. Yeah.
Doff your cap.
Right.
How do we get onto that? What are we doing? Is there a question?
Question of the week.
That was news.
News we've done. Has anyone got any other news? No. Any other news? Come on. See, question of the week. Right, I am going to play the question of the week jingle, because although I said no jingles, question of the week is, it's unique, isn't it? It's its own.
It's a staple.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's the question, it's the question, it's the question of the week. It's the question, it's the question, it's the question of the week.
So the question of the week is, does taking part in competitions and challenges help in the real world? If so, how? And what do they not teach you? So what gaps, if you only did challenges, what gaps would you have? So these might be Excel challenges. They could be Excel World Championships. It could just be a dashboard competition. Any of those things, do they actually help in the real world?
You know,
So, who wants to go first? Sue?
I'll do a BI thing before you get into Excel. It's very heavy Excel to this week. Very,
It will be.
So I'll do some BI. I say yes, they help a huge amount. I love competitions and challenges. Maybe not competition so much. I'm not a competition type person, but I do like challenges because you learn and you get to play and you get to expand your toolbox and you get to see what other people have done, and then you get to debate and look at your code. There's one at the moment, 25 days of DAX, and we did Power Query challenges, and there's a Workout Wednesday challenge for visualization. So particularly with BI, you're learning all the time different things, so it's helping you hone that. What does it not teach you? In my opinion, it doesn't teach you the complexity of real data, because quite often what you get given is a curated data set for which you do things, and some of the things you find in the real world are nigh impossible to replicate. Some of the things I deal with. So I think they're brilliant, but I think they're part of your journey.
Well said.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Dim. No, I want Dim to go first. Like, I don't compete enough.
I could talk about this for a long time.
That's why I got in first.
So, I mean, it's interesting. It's two very different worlds, like the sort of, dashboarding and like that DAX challenge you were talking about, I think is very different from the competitions I mostly do. I think I agree with everything Sue said about that. The only thing I would add is, again, mostly from an outsider's perspective on those, I haven't done a lot of them, but I think you can really hone a lot of kind of specific technical skills. I think for some of those challenges, what you also miss is the big picture. In other words, sometimes there's a very clever way, if you have your data set up in totally the wrong way, to still get what you need out of it. But in the real world, the right way to solve that is, probably somewhere upstream of that, to restructure your data so that you don't face that problem. Which I don't think that's a strike against them, because, sometimes you need to be able to handle weird things. But in the big picture, in the real world, it's, the really clever formula might not be the way to do that. But for the competitions I do, like the Excel modeling and problem solving competitions, I mean, first answer, do they help? I would say yes, immensely. And I'll elaborate on that in a second. But what do they not teach you, I think, is an interesting one, because for the modeling competitions especially, it's like, here is a set of assumptions that describes, whatever, a company, they're going to make an investment, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, forecast the company's financials. Like, it's a great way to hone your technical skills, like build a 3-statement model quickly. It's a great way to test your accuracy. It is in many ways totally unlike building a model in the real world, because in the real world, the hardest part is getting to that neat, 3-page assumptions that cleanly articulates everything that's going to happen to drive the company's business forward. Like, getting people to agree on what are the assumptions and what's a plausible range and all of that stuff is, I mean, in my mind, that is, like, when I build models for clients, I think that's actually where I add the most value, rather than actually, taking that and turning it into a model. That's the part that's like much harder in the real world and much more valuable, to be able to say, like, you think you have these 75 assumptions, but actually probably just these 10 of them are really going to make a difference. B, you think this is the range, but actually the top end of that is not really plausible. Think about some benchmarks, or think about the size of the market, or think about whatever. Like that sense check. There's none, and there can't be in, like, if you want to be able to say what is the, value of the company based on all these assumptions, based on discounting all the cash flows, and there has to be a right answer, then, by definition, you have to nail down all the assumptions. But that is very, very unrealistic.
So many people in BI, I always say it depends. When you ask a question or something, you get it depends, and it seems, I'm not a modeler, financial modeler, but if you're talking to people and trying to get them to vary down almost like your parameters of what you're working through, to get that specific must be incredibly difficult. And not do the fallback of, well, it depends. It depends if it's raining, or it depends if it's this, or it depends if the exchange, to actually have a constant number that it varies between. I can imagine that'd be very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real skill to write a question clearly enough that anyone who follows it correctly will arrive at the same answers. Over, whatever, 3 different statements and 10 different assumptions and, monthly model for 30 years or whatever. Like, it takes a lot to nail that all down. And
with what they want to achieve and what they're coming in with, I would imagine as a group of people to define that. It's hard enough as one, but if you've got a whole group. So how do you do it then? Sorry, how do you do it? How do you help them define it? Is it a series of iterations or?
Yeah, I mean, usually someone doesn't hire me unless they've got some idea where they want to start. And then it's usually a case of, for me, it's like finding the right level of complexity. Because like I said, it's, if it's kind of, let's just assume that everything grows by 10%, that's kind of useless. But if it's, let's, model every product in every division in every country separately, then, it's just a mess. Like for me, it's about finding, there's not a perfect number, but like finding a small set of reasonably orthogonal assumptions that are going to be the really big drivers of the business. And maybe that's like a half dozen or a dozen assumptions, and that often means, if they've got like very specific ideas about, well, this has to be different here and different there and different here and different there, it's like, okay, so let's think about how you can group things together. Okay, you have operations in 50 countries, but maybe there's a block of 10 of them that have similar behavior here, and there's a block of 25 of them that have similar behavior here, rather than just every country head making their own assumptions and your model is kind of weirdly out of whack. But yeah, I mean, it's that part is definitely more art than science.
Yeah. Can I go back to the battle question though? The original. So I had a view on this now that I've been training myself for the battles a little bit, which is just at the kind of like the function level, going into these competitions and actually just practicing for them really helps like solidify your understanding of how the nuances of functions work. So I totally agree with what Dim said. Like there's a real world and then there's battle world, but actually it's kind of a fun way to practice, which is quite hard to say in many areas in this space. It's quite fun.
I agree with that. Look, yeah. I started with the negative because that's kind of the I guess the simpler, shorter point to get across. But
yeah,
I'm not overall negative on the format at all as a way to learn. Like for me, the biggest thing is if you think about like deliberate practice and what you need for that, like short feedback cycles. Like how often in the real world will someone assign you a model to build, but also themselves build the exact model in detail to the point where they will be able to tell you not just like your valuation seems a little high, but your whatever repayment on the revolver in Q3 of 2027 is too high because you missed this thing. Like that level of feedback basically doesn't exist in the real world. Like someone will give you, a big complicated set of stuff. You'll spend like often a week or more building a model, and then you'll usually get like someone might like actually audit it, but certainly after a long time. And what you'll mostly get is like sense check. Do the high level results basically seem right? And if they do, let's move on. And so the ability to get like short cycle, very detailed feedback, like did you get 2027 cash flow exactly right? And if not, what went wrong? Is, like I said, it's just totally different from anything you get in the real world. And I think how much and how quickly you learn from that, especially if you do it in a kind of deliberate, thoughtful way, is enormous. So like I don't do this as much anymore, but like back in, 10 years ago when I was doing model off, and like when there was a lot of the kinds of questions they asked that I just hadn't seen that kind of modeling before, I spent a while like training, like, okay, I'm going to work on this question. I'm going to, make a record of how long did it take me? Which things did I get right? What conceptually, were my mistakes? And then, even like there's way more now, but even back then there was like a big enough staple of questions that I could, rotate through a large set and see, okay, I'm consistently struggling with whatever 3-statement modeling. So let me, look at a few more of those, make sure I'm getting it right. I'm struggling with, whatever it is, like, they're generally questions meant to be answered in something between like 20 and 60 minutes. And so, maybe if you're struggling with it, it's going to take you longer than that. And, by the time you compare your answers, figure out what went wrong, look at a solution model and all that, it'll certainly take you longer than that to sort of study a question. But you could quite reasonably in 2 hours have a go at a question, figure out what went wrong, look at a solution model, and then do a fresh build yourself. And if you do 2 hours on one question like that once a week for 6 months, the amount you will learn from that, the amount of feedback you'll get from that is just enormous.
Yeah.
And the other thing to sort of add to that is, and this is more true now because like Model Off, A, there weren't as many questions, and B, there was a smaller case design team who had somewhat similar backgrounds. But now, like any competitor can set a round of the Financial Modeling World Cup. And so the range of topics that you get exposed to is enormous. So like, if you're a project finance person, but don't do much dealing with data, or if you're a FP&A person but don't do a lot of like valuation models, like the range of things that people do with financial models is vast. And I certainly wouldn't claim to be an expert on all of them because that is literally impossible. But the amount of things that I've been exposed to and like thought at least once in the last 5 years about, okay, so how would I model, I don't know, clearing buy and sells in an exchange, or how would I model, gnarly valuation issues and purchase price allocation and whatever. Like there's a lot that you get exposed to if you just kind of do it regularly.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to do.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, just that I need to compete more because which Dim's been on at me for long enough which is true. So I'm going to try and commit next year to compete as regularly as possible, which will be horrendously embarrassing for a very long time. And then slowly I'll get better. But that's that, to Dim's point, there's such a variety of exposure you can get with these things. It's a hell of a lot of work that goes into this stuff. It's like I'm genuinely so chuffed that it is a thing, and that one of those things ends in Vegas. How cool is that?
So cool. I will say, by the way, I can't talk about the topic of learning from competing without banging on my hobby horse, which is the number of times over the years that I have heard people say, yeah, I'm thinking about entering. I just need to do some training. I just need to get better. And Giles is laughing because he's heard me say this so many times. I do say it a lot, but like, this is the training. Like, for some people like me, it is, I'm competing, I'm trying to win, but like the biggest value you get out of this is not winning, even if you like whatever you win a few $1,000s. Like the value you get out of that is literally nothing compared to the value you get out of learning a bunch of skills, and you will get that by doing it. Not by, sitting on your sofa watching videos about how to run faster or something.
Yeah. And it's
videos at half speed.
Yeah. But if you do it, then, and especially if you do it as like the 25 days of DAX or 30 days of Power Query or something like that with a group, with a cohort, then you become friends through chatting about your answers. And you see, that's how I met Christian the first time, because we both did 30 days of Power Query and we'd all, share our results. And then, you've done it in, so you then get to make friends as you're learning. But completely agree. There's talking about it and doing it are two different things, and you just got to try, haven't you?
Yeah.
I would say that for me, originally, I see these challenges on LinkedIn or elsewhere, how can you write a function to work out whether words are a palindrome and various other things. And I would just feel like, and I'm just there thinking, what a complete waste of time. I'm never going to need to do that in the real world, right? I mean, no one's ever asked, is this a palindrome? Can you check that in Excel? Because I don't trust your ability to look at a word and be able to tell. But then equally, as I was thinking about this, it's not about the question. It's never about the question or what you're actually being asked. Because ultimately, I never did that challenge, so I don't know. I don't even know how I would solve it. But
it took me forever, ever.
But if I'd have tried, think about the techniques and the skills that I would have had to have used, my understanding of strings, arrays, and a whole load of other things would have been significantly greater than if I hadn't have done it. So I think it's more about the core skills and critical thinking than it is about the challenge in itself. And I think in terms of things like Power BI, because the exposure that you get, like people often, like with Power BI, you build a model, you build the, you've got your model, you've got your visuals on top of that model. Then often you kind of tweak things as time progresses. But how often do you get to build an entirely new model from scratch and think about what's best practices and how we do this? It's not as often as you'd like. So therefore, those challenges, I think, especially in terms of Power BI, gives people an opportunity to almost go back from the ground up again and apply everything they've learned since, because the first model you build is rubbish, right? You make a whole load of mistakes and you don't know that until you spend weeks or months on it. And then it's almost like you need to go back and start those, or you wish you'd have started the model the way you had at the start. So it's kind of a way of building up skills that you assume that you don't need or that you overlook.
Yeah, I think like for me, when I look back at my career, the times where I've learned the most are where I've been under real pressure and maybe I've made little mistakes or whatever, or figured out better ways to do things later. So it's like that on speed, isn't it? Just shortcutting that process of like try, get wrong, learn. Oh, my cat's just deciding to join us. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking mostly about the kind of financial modeling side of things and what I was talking about before, the sort of technical skills, but I totally agree with what Mark said, which is like some of the esports challenges or like the Excel BI challenges, like is this number prime, or just things that seem like they have, I mean, exactly like you said, like you're never like, if you're building a valuation model, you're like, okay, well, people build valuation models and get paid for it. People don't test for primality in Excel and get paid for it. But it's, I compare it to, if you're a rugby player and you're doing squats in the gym, you're like, well, I'm never going to just stand on the field and, reach down without moving any other part of my body to get the ball. It's like, sure. But that, building that muscle will help you when you're, playing the real game. And I definitely noticed that, especially since the kind of esports became a bigger and a more regular thing, and there's a whole kind of community of people solving it and sharing solutions. Like my level of comfort with like complex functions, like with lambdas and lets and other weird things, has gone way up. And as it does, I find that I use it more in real life.
Yeah.
So some of the answers that we've got on LinkedIn. So Shirley said that she really gets to do them, but sometimes that they sometimes feel a bit abstract and don't relate to real life. But she then said actually she loves seeing the steps that other people go through. Seeing other people take on these challenges then helps her to think how she might have solved them or how she might then apply that somewhere else. So therefore, by people sharing their own challenges, it helps other people to develop and gain knowledge. So I think people who do share that is good. Tonya, again, she said, "Oh, I've never done them. I usually spend time working, focused on solving my challenges. Solving my own challenges. And then when she's not doing that, I'll read it properly. Never."
That'd be great. Thank you.
Kind of paraphrases, not that. Never done them, as I'm usually spending time focused on solving my challenges, and off time, well, I'm doing the same thing in a different role. So ultimately, you've got similar challenges wherever they are. She also said that I know I learn better when the data set or scenario is relatable, which I think if you can understand the context, that always helps. And then I think the name is Shahine. They said it helps in lots of ways, but they made the point that also sometimes due to challenges, you will not forget what you've learned, and it helps to refine your skills. And I think there is definitely a piece around, you can read something in a textbook, you can see someone do it on a video, and it doesn't sink in at all until you've had to do it or go through it. That's the point. You suddenly be like, now I see why this works. Now I see why it matters. So actually, that practice piece is what actually, it's that thing you learn however much by seeing, however much by whatever, and then it's by doing, then gives you a higher level, and then how much you learn by teaching is then kind of even higher.
Yeah.
So I think there's an element of just doing it helps to add all of that knowledge.
And what I would say as well, it's that point where you have to invest enough time in understanding how to do it or struggling to do it to really understand the depth of what you're trying to do. And then when you see other people that are solutions, then they almost they mean more, because you can see how they fix something you really thought about trying to fix.
Totally.
And it's getting to a point where you actually get to that point where you can't go anymore, you don't understand, and not continuing, but then seeking out to get help to understand. So I think I did that palindrome one, and I think I spent hours just back and forth trying to think. And then when you reach out, you think, I shouldn't have waited. I shouldn't have spent so much time on it. I should have stopped sooner and recognize that I need to look at other ways. My brain is going that way, and actually it could go this way. Because sometimes if you look at other people, not just focusing on what you're doing, you'll see that there are, people have really wonderful ways to solve things that you might not have thought about because you're already invested.
Yeah, and I think the point you made at the start, Sue, is spot on, which is you won't realize how hard or how impressive.
Yeah.
I think of it as like you watch someone walk across the room, and you're like, that's easy, I can walk across the room, but I don't have to do it right now. But then you go to walk across and you realize actually there's a creaky floorboard here, and there's a giant hole leading to a pit full of spikes over here, and you don't realize how carefully they've been navigating until you try it yourself and hit all these pitfalls and the nuances and the stuff. Like, it's always the challenge for, Giles and Mark and I all do like YouTube videos, and it's,
I think we should go for one together, Dim, because I'd love to chat for hours about this. This would be until he gave up running. We go for a run, and then we can just chat.
You replacing me with Dim now that I've retired? Yes. Is this what's happened?
Yes, now you can go because you're not running anymore. He's training for an Ironman.
Can I just say that I'm very concerned about Dim because his living room does not sound safe. Okay, he's got walking across the room. Okay, a creaky floorboard I can handle, but he's got like this pit. I mean, what?
Mark, have you never had young kids?
Lego
Actually, I do understand that.
Lego bricks everywhere.
Yeah. They really hurt.
And they do. They're so pointy.
Especially when you're half asleep. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. That's our question of the week. Let's now move on to the main topic. The main topic, as always.
Cool. 10 minutes left.
For a long time already. Before we get on to the main topic. So the main topic question is. This was partly inspired by something that Sue said ages ago, and I thought it was genius. So I'll share what Sue said ages ago in a few moments. So the question is, what are the best methods for building a personal toolkit for productivity? And here we're kind of thinking about templates, add-ins, custom functions, script libraries, all those kind of things. So the reason this question kind of came up is because Sue mentioned about in Power BI, she has a Power BI report built that has all the things that she'd use on a regular basis already built into it. And I just thought, I do that in Excel. Why don't I do it in Power BI? That's the most blatantly obvious thing to do. Instead, every time I'd be like, what did I do with that calendar table? I know it's around here somewhere.
Where's my date table? Did I remember to make it a date table? Did I remember to turn off my auto date time?
Exactly.
Did I remember to stop my relationships come in?
And it's such a simple thing to do, right? Because it doesn't take, you're going to do it anyway. It just doesn't take any skill to just get to that point and then save it for next time. So that's the question. What are the best methods for building a personal toolkit for productivity? Who would like to go first?
Shall I go?
Go on, Giles.
Do you know what? One of these days I've got to turn up and read what the topic is before I block up, because I just have to think
Mark
of a
did
spot.
such a fabulous summary for us, Giles. Summarised it.
I've just gone to the other extreme. I planned so much for my hosting session that I've literally just rocked up and gone, all right, we're talking 2:00. I turned up 3 hours ago, by the way, and none of you were here because we changed the time. Anyway, what was the question? So in terms of modeling, I remember years ago, I used to have templates, so I would work on a project and I go, oh, that's a clever way to do that thing. So I remember I ended up with a kind of master model that was a collection of all the components that I may use in various things, which was actually very useful. So from a modeling perspective, old school, that was what used to happen. I mean, there's tools on the market now that can seriously help, like the Dana and OpenBox, but the conversation around that modular spreadsheet approach has kind of died down a bit, I feel like, in the last 6 months to a year. The modern thing is the Lambda side of modeling, that DIM is, right at the forefront of, where you can turn very complex grid modeling logic that was only really available, I guess, to coders, VBA people. And you can now do so much of that in the grid of Excel. And there are GitHub gists where you can find other people's logic, which is incredible, people like Craig Hatmaker and others. But you can also just build up your own repository of pre-built Lambdas. So from an Excel perspective, that's what I do. From a non-Excel perspective, my inbox in Outlook is literally you can see how stressed or insane I'm feeling on any particular week because of the number of things in my inbox, which I keep to 0 until I became an MVP. And then it was just spam a lot everywhere. It's outrageous. So that's it. Excel templates and trying to keep my inbox to 0, which I do quite successfully, I think.
Do you want mine from BI?
Go on to.
So I have my Power BI template for whenever I start a new one. So that has key things. I have a GIST repository, which I have M-code, etc. in. I have tablet editor where I keep my M scripts. My C# scripts, so that it just attaches to my model and it does various things that gets rid of all my summation columns and lots of formatting things. I might use a theme files for specific coloring. And there are some other external tools that you can use as well, like Measure Killer, if you want to, clean up your model. So, and DAX Studio as well. So I use external tools with pre-built templates and scripts to automate. And of course, we now have Python in Power BI. So there is this fantastic library which allows us to attach to workspaces and do all sorts of funky things with documentation and changing models and other parts.
And are you consistent with all of these? So you've got like theme files. All of these things are additional files or additional elements. So are they all? I mean, I suppose if it's in Tablet Editor there, but it's where you can get to it. That's your central repository. For the stuff that's outside Tablet Editor, is that how do you? Tablet
Editor and GIST. Yeah, Tablet Editor and GIST I use a lot. Theme files I should be better at. I need to be better at. But and my template is just my go-to. But then I also try to, what I find is quite difficult is capturing all of the knowledge. So I use various things like Obsidian to, it's how do you put your personal knowledge kits of how you read something and you think, well, I need to refer back to that. How do I capture that? That's what I find a challenge with.
You called it a GIST. Can I just tackle that question before we move on?
I was wondering about that. Is this the latest flame war? I thought it was just GIST, but
it might be my pronunciation.
GIF versus GIST.
You might be right. I just thought I'd throw it out there because I'm sure lots of other people will be like, "Oh God, is it GIST or GIST?" And confusingly, it's GitHub GIST, which can be hard to say at times.
Yeah, I've probably pronounced it wrong.
It might be the Irish spelling.
Yeah. Yes, the Cornish spelling. It's just where you can put little snippets of code that you can refer to. But it might be I've got the name wrong.
Sorry, sidetrack.
I mean, it could well be like every time I think I know how to say something and someone says, no, that's not how you say it. It turns out there's like a lot of things that, because I've lived on both sides of the Atlantic for quite a while, I lose track of like, this is what Brits say, this is what Americans say. Like, I just don't know anymore.
Yeah,
How do you
So
say?
it could well be one of those.
You need a different dimension in there as well, Dim. This is about how would Sue say it. So
Cornish way. How do you say aluminium?
I mean, I would say aluminium, but
Fantastic.
like that's one of the ones that I would be. There's a whole sidebar here, but a bit like what I was saying about how I say my name. Like, if I'm speaking to an American, I say vitamin or tomato or aluminum. There's some that I'm like, I don't even elevator and lift. I can never remember who says what. And like, you can remind me now and I'll forget again. It doesn't matter. But like there are ones like vitamin, aluminum, aluminium, just in my head, these are like totally different things. And so I adapt it according to who I'm speaking to. Unless I'm speaking to someone who is like subconsciously ambiguous. Like my brother has lived in the US for more than half of his life. And I often, when I'm speaking to him, get to the middle of a sentence. Subconsciously, I'm like, oh, I'm about to say the word vitamin. No, wait, vitamin. No, wait, and I actually trip over my tongue because I'm like, wait, who are you? What language do you speak?
How do you want to be known? Do you want to be referred to as American or English?
I mean, I'm Irish. I'm also,
yeah,
I don't know. I honestly, I don't feel particularly anything. I feel a little just, I don't know, international.
I love that. Did I say American and English? Because if I said that, then
did.
I am in so much
That is
trouble.
not correct.
I apologise profusely, Ireland. I apologise.
Anyway, should we steer this back? Should we steer this back?
Oh, there you are, Mark.
There, see, we don't need wind. We don't need wind.
We don't need wind.
And I now know from experience that Mark's been thinking about saying that for at least 5 minutes. It's very stressful.
Get this back onto the main topic. So, Dim, do you want to share your thoughts about?
Wynne has probably been listening to this for the last 10 minutes, thinking, when is Mark going to get things back on track?
You know what she's like. She'll go off on a tangent if you don't stop her, Mark. Stop her.
What was the question, Mark?
No, I remember the question. It's all good. So I guess let me answer this in two parts. In the how, I'll just talk about the things that I mostly use. So I've got at least 4 things that I use that I would think of as kind of falling under this category. So one is I've got a sheet template. So one of my favorite things about the fact that I do not work in a consulting firm anymore is that I don't have to put everything into PowerPoint. But what I do instead is I make Excel sheets that look pretty and like, professional PowerPoint slides. And you can do that with like the print formatting. You have, the logo, you have the header, you have, your nice line across the bottom, the page number, and all this stuff. And it always gives me a little kick when someone says, hey, can you send me the PowerPoint of this? I'm like, nope, there is no PowerPoint. Here's the Excel. And after, years of, okay, we've updated the model. Now we have to update every number in this 40-page PowerPoint deck, including all the footnotes. Don't miss anything. It's such a nightmare. Like building your presentation in Excel is just so much better. But I have like pinned to my, like, when you hit the like open, you've got your kind of pinned file at the top. I have in there a sheet template. This is mostly for Deutsche Bank, because that's kind of where I worked for many, many years and made most of my Excel presentations. But like, it's got the same print settings, it's got the DB logo, it's got the the standard colors and everything, and it means that like it saves me some time because I don't have to rebuild it every time. But in a way, I think the thing that I've realized after using it for like 10 plus years is that the bigger value is I can take a slide that I made 8 years ago and pull it into my current presentation, and it will all like, the print settings are the same, like the header, the title text is the same size, the logo is the same size and in the same place, and it just flows. And so that, like, the value of having something that you use consistently like that over a long period, I think is actually more than you might realize it for. I actually think the bigger thing is the long-term consistency rather than the kind of saving 10 seconds, setting up print settings. Well, to be fair, the print settings are kind of fidgety, saving several minutes setting up print settings every time. So that's one that I use, is the sheet template. Second thing I use a lot is chart templates, because frankly, Excel charts are not by default all that attractive. And so, when I've gone through a whole set of tweaks and refinements, it's very easy to just right click on that and say save as template, and then you get your little templates folder that has all your go-tos. And so you get the nice color scheme, or you get little white borders so it's easier to see the separation, or you get no grid lines, or you get labels only in this place, or whatever. Like, there's lots you can do with it, but the main thing is, again, if you take 10 seconds after you've painstakingly refined your chart to just save it as a template, it saves you tons of time down the line. And again, it causes more consistency, because there's some things that you will notice every time, and there's other things that you won't notice every time, like, oh yeah, I forgot to take off the grid lines this time, or I forgot to change the font size of the data labels, or whatever. Whereas if you do it from a template, it will look exactly the same every time. And if you're then taking older things and newer things and putting them together, that consistency is super valuable. So that's two. Third thing, as Giles mentioned, is I do have, mostly for competition rather than for real life, my Lambda workbook, which is just a file that has, I guess, 30 or so kind of pre-written lambdas in it, which are anything from kind of quite general utility things, like something that shifts an array up or down or left or right, so that you can compare, this value versus the value in the previous row and that kind of thing, to like some that are very, competition specific, like, convert a little dice Unicode into a number, because they love to put dice and cards and things like that in questions. And again, that's just kind of lives pinned to my kind of regular files. And so, anytime I need to import all of those, I just open that file up and copy a sheet over from it. And I can't mention that without mentioning that I think Giles has talked about this before, but he and I are both beta testing a cool new tool called OA Robot, which is great. It's still in, like, I guess, semi-public, semi-private beta, but I think they're kind of onboarding beta testers rapidly. So if anyone is interested, go oarobot.com, and you'll probably get into it pretty quickly. But it is the amount of friction reduction that it does in terms of, like, importing and reusing lambdas, importing and reusing macros between files, like all of this stuff about your productivity toolkit. It is gold for that. So that's number 3 is my lambdas, and then number 4 is I have a few files, again, for macros that I just use a lot. So, like, for example, I work on bonus planning at Deutsche Bank for many years now, and there's various things that always happen as part of that. Like, for example, here's our global comp file. Now we need to cut it up and send it to whatever. This bit goes to Capital Markets Americas, and this bit goes to investment banking coverage in APAC and whatever. And those file cuts is, like, almost always the same macro. It's like, okay, here's where the file is, here's the password, here's the column you need to cut on, here's the different values you'll find there, and then here's whatever. If it says Cap Markets Americas, then the email should go to this person with a copy to this person. Their password is this. Run yes or no, and then you can, like, very quickly, like, I just kind of grab that old file again every year, and then just tweak a few settings, and off I go. So again, just like having those kind of things in a place where you can quickly access them is definitely a big time saver.
So it seems like, based on what people have said, is that it's primarily about having a easy to access library of small things that you can implement in lots of scenarios, and therefore you might have to, you might want to implement. Let's say you might implement 5 of your productivity elements in something rather. So it's more about that than building up one thing that then becomes that is more specific to a scenario. So therefore, you might have 5 tools that do lots of small things rather than one tool that does one thing and then another big one tool that does something else. Is that how kind of people are working? So having individual things rather than lots of specific things.
I would say I have a bit of a mix of both. I think the reusability value is definitely higher for things that are kind of small in utility and you'll use them every time. There are a few things, again, because I spent like more than 10 years working at Deutsche Bank and I still do kind of consulting work for them. There are a number of kind of processes that sort of only happen once a year, but well, now that means I've done them a dozen times. And so for some of those, there is like, it's not a sort of, as Eric would say, a micro automation. It is, a giant suite of things that all sit together to make this happen. But, if you do this thing, even if you only do it once a year, if you do it every year for a long time, then having that kind of big lump of stuff that you can just roll forward the next year is still a time saver. But I definitely more often reuse the things that are kind of small but apply in many situations.
The mistake I think I've seen modelers, to be fair, I think I tried to do this once as well a long time ago, is if you think of the opposite of lots of micro things, I've seen modelers try to build the gold-plated model that's really just from a modeler's perspective that has every potential option you could ever think of for everything, like every single type of depreciation calculation there, and you switch one off and the other one on and things like that, which is just a crazy way to go about doing it. Like technically you could make it work, but it would be a very, very large model. If you try and go to the opposite end, I'm not sure you even could do that. And that's a really good argument then for, well, probably AI soon, but Medano, OpenBox, those sort of modular spreadsheet tools.
I think it is easy to think, you're doing lots of things in the same way. So therefore, if I build one awesome tool that has the parameters to handle anything I want, in the Power BI world, I have my one massive data model, which I can, no matter what data set I get in, I just plug it in versus Power Query, and as long as I get that to work in the right format, it will all flow through. And I think there's so much complexity in the things we have to do. There's so much complexity in the real world that often you end up with so many parameters that you have to handle that it becomes unmanageable. And I've tried to do similar things in the past, and it just grows to the point that, you just have to look at a function in DAX or Excel or somewhere, and you look at the number of, if you look at the pivot by, which has got, I think, 11 arguments, and all that's doing is showing data in a 2-dimensional grid, and there's 11 arguments, and that's just doing one thing. As soon as you get bigger and bigger, you're like, well, how many arguments, how many parameters do we need for this thing to work? So I think there's that thing of small in utility versus something that is big and has got those parameters. And I think there's possibly small in utility is probably more useful on an ongoing basis.
I'm really looking forward to your and Wynn's battle on the easiest way to use pivot by. Easiest way to use the 11 arguments.
No one's going to care, because everyone's going to see the easiest, most easiest data validation drop-down list. That people are going to be blown away. They're going to be like, who cares about pivot by when we've got this method for drop-down lists?
Bold claim. We'll remember that. This is recorded.
Yeah. Anyone listening to this that wants a process simplified, just tell them that you can do it quicker than Mark or Wynn. And
let the battle commence.
Listen, what you've done. Oh, let's go.
Well, on that note, we've now gone full circle in the show, so it seems like a good time to wrap up. Oh. So we are, as always, we're over time, but hopefully everyone's enjoyed listening to it. Thank you, Dim, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and so in 2 weeks' time, Giles is not here, and we've got.
He's going to be in
with
Vegas
Dim.
with me.
Dim is really looking forward to wearing the white fur coat and the glasses. He's promised me he wants photo evidence.
You know, I have listened to all of the Unpivot podcasts. This is the first time I'm ever seeing the video, and I am disappointed that you are not wearing that coat. I just assumed that you always do.
Yeah, he's got it.
Don't you worry, Dim. At any moment, I can get in character on request.
Oh,
Oh, very good. Anyway, so in 2 weeks' time, we've got Chandeep with us, who Chandeep has recently passed 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So he's doing well. It'd be great to have him here. So yes, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Yes. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.